In this video, we learn accessing elements in the component. So till now, we have seen how to pass the data within the component from JavaScript to our HTML. And then we saw to pass the data from HTML to JavaScript using the on-click handler and all. So now we'll see how we can access the elements in the component. So to access the component or access the element rendered by the component, we use the template property. So as you know, in our JavaScript section, we learned about query selector and query selector all APIs of document. And that time I told you guys like we in LWC, it gonna be the same behavior except the way we gonna access it. So here, whenever you want to run or you want to fetch any element from the HTML, we use this dot template dot query selector. So this dot template is point out to the current component, not to the all components or to the whole page. So this dot template points, okay, I am in this particular component and I can fetch only these elements that are related to this particular component. So that's why we use this dot template. Then we use query selector, and query selector when you want to access only single element. And if there are many elements, suppose your selector is the tag name like h1 and you are querying using the query selector and there are multiple h1, so it will pick up the first one that comes from top to bottom. Similarly, if you want to fetch all the selectors, like all the element that match the selector, then we'll use query selector all, and it always returns the nodes, array of nodes, but that is not exactly an array but the nodes of array. And we can use element.template type as well. Instead of this dot template, you can fetch the first element and then run your template query selector all on the template. We'll see all this example in a minute. And during the CSS also, or during the JavaScript section also, I explained you like what all are the selectors. Most commonly in LWC, we use either a tag name or the element name or the class name. Will not go with the ID and will not use IDs selector with the query selector or query selector all. So I'll come back to this point later. Let's go to our VS Code and start playing with query selector. So I'm going to create a new component, and palette, active web component. I'll say hello query selector demo, the default path. Now my component is ready. First, let me make this component exposable. So I'll just replace it with the is exposed to true and target is a lightning app page. So this component should be available in the lightning app page. So we'll come to the main part. So here I'll first create a h1 tag and I'll say, hey, I'm a heading, and below this I'll create a button. I'll go with the HTML plain button. You can create the lightning button as well. Fetch details, and I'll say on click call fetch detail handler, and this will create a method in the JavaScript or the class, and here we'll write our logic. So right now what I have done is I have created a text, I have created a button, and on click of that button I want to run something here in the code so that automatically I'm able to fetch this element text. To be specific, I want to fetch this text that is under the h1 tag, and to do that here comes our query selector, because right now I'm fetching only one element at a time. Okay, so I'll say this dot template. So it means just look into your template only, not to the other component template. So it looks into this template tags only, and then we'll say we want to run the query on the selector, and our selector is h1 tag. So I said go and bring the h1 tag. You can store this into an variable or you can run your things directly as well. So let's store this into a variable, and then in the console I'll print element dot, I want to fetch the inner text. I'll say inner text. So now if I deploy this component, then on the click of the button, it should give me the inner text of this tag. To make this component little bit better, I'll quickly create the lightning card. I'll give the title query selector, and within this we'll create a div with a class that will give us the margin around, and let's paste this code inside the card. So let's deploy this component with the same command sftx force source push. Once component deployed, let's go and edit the page of our app 0 to heroine LWC. We'll quickly go and look into our component name, that is hello query selector demo. I'll place it on the right side column and save it. We'll go back, and now this is our card. I'll do the right click, select inspect element. This is the console where it prints the data. This is the way how we see whether the things are working fine or not. So if I click on the fetch detail, it will call the h1 tag. It will use the query selector method, and it brings the inner text if everything runs fine. So now I click the fetch detail. Now you see here it's printing, hey, I am a heading. So this is how query selector works. Now let's go and see how your query selector all works. So I'm back in VS Code. Now we'll quickly create a property called usernames, and I'll initialize it as an array of names. So I'll call it as John, I'll call it as Smith, I'll call it as Nick, I'll call it as Mike. So 4 names are good with us. Now I'm gonna use the loop here. So I'll say if it is a loop, I'm gonna use the template tag, and loop is the for each loop. In for each loop, you already know now it takes on which property of array you want to run the loop. So I want to run the loop on the usernames. And what is the each item? So for item, each item I'll call it as user, and here in between I'll say a div tag just as a wrapper, or I can ignore this as well. So I can directly say I'll use div only, and I'll give a class of name, and here I'll print all the username in the div, so it will start looping it. And we need the key property, that is very much important here. So let's add the key property, and key can be anything, but it should be always a unique, and it should be string or a number. So our users names are anyhow it's unique, so I'll keep key as a user. I have given the class name explicitly because I want to fetch the elements that has a unique selector. So I'm adding explicitly a class name so that I can able to differentiate from this particular template which element I want to fetch. I'll show you in a minute. So now I'll go on to the same function, that button is fetch detail handler, and this time I want to fetch all the elements that are printing inside the loop. To do that, what I'm gonna do is I'll say const user elements equal to this dot query selector all. Right now I'm using the query selector all because there are many elements, not a single element, because once the loop runs there are 3 divs or 4 divs will form based on the number of users. So I'll say okay, query selector all, fetch all the element that has a class name. So I'm giving a class name here, so it will fetch all the elements that has a class name. And what I'm gonna do here is I'll take this elements. This element is a node. Actually, in many tutorials, in many blogs, I have seen people run the loop directly on it. it's not exactly an array, so always convert whatever the value is coming into an array using array.from. So we are converting our user elements, that is a node of elements, to an proper array, and then we are running our for each loop, and we'll say each element will come as an item. Here I'm using an arrow function, you can use a normal function as well, and then we'll print each item is nothing, it's a each div actually. User list an array of divs and item is the each div. So in each div I can fetch inner text. So now if I click on the button, it will query the all the divs and all the names, it will loop and print in the console. So let's deploy this and see how our query selector all works. And before checking, I forgot to add this dot template here. So make sure it's a this dot template dot query selector. Let's deploy this again and see in the output. So I refresh the page. Our console is empty. Let's click the button. So it should fetch first, hey, I am a heading that is coming through the query selector, and then it should fetch all the names one by one because we are running the query selector all, and that will fetching all the div elements with the class name, and then we are printing those in the console. So if I hit now fetch button, fetch details, now you can see in the console it's printing John, Smith, Nike, Mike. Here I am heading. Apart from fetching the text or the inner text, there are many things you can play around with it. It's not always recommend to use the query selector because ideally you are playing with the DOM, and playing with the DOM is always a costlier operation. But in some use cases you need it, like sometime in real, if I talk about a real-time use case, in one of my project I have used, like from backend I was getting the HTML tags, so I need to render those HTML tags dynamically on the screen, right? In that case we have to use the query selector, right? And sometimes we have to run the styling dynamically, that time also we have to use the query selector. Let's go and see the styling demo first. So let's add some style to our h1 tag, that is this hey I'm heading. To do it using the query selector, I'll do one thing first. I'll take this console to the top so that we can keep our same code together. So this code is relevant to query selector all, and this code is relevant to our query selector. So I want to run an styling on this particular element. So within the element, when we fetch the element gives us so many properties. So one of the property that you can use is dot style, and what kind of style you want to add. So suppose I want to give the border, you can give the color as well, that's the simplest one. So if I want to give the style of border, I can give the style name, I want 1 pixel solid red, and once we hit the button, it will fetch the element, it apply the style, and immediately on the HTML we'll see the style. So let's deploy this and see the styling is working or not. So I'm covering the different use cases that you can use with the this.template.query selector. So I'm back to my page. Now if I click on fetch details, it should bring the border to the here I am heading text. I clicked and now you see it immediately brings the border. So this is how you can apply the dynamic styling as well. We'll talk about styling more in the upcoming videos. So next I want to show you how we can append the attributes dynamically. Sometimes we want to append the attributes. Right now I'm hovering on the John, Smith or Nick or Mike, nothing is happening. Let's add a title tag dynamically to this, and to do that let's go to our VS Code. Now what I want is I want to append the title tag so that my div should look like this, title and user. You can do it from here, it's simple. And this title tag is very important from accessibility point of view. Sometimes you need to run it explicitly from JavaScript. So, but here in this use case it's simple, but let's see how we can apply it using JavaScript. So to do that, each item, as I said, is an individual div, and to apply that I'll say item dot set attribute, So set attribute take two property. First is the tag or the attribute name. So I want the attribute name to be title, and second is the value that you want to assign. So I want to assign the text only. So if I hover over the John pop-up, small pop-up should come with the John like that. So let's deploy this and see. So I deployed the component, I refresh the page, and now if I click on fetch details, right now before clicking it I'll show you, go to this icon. This is to select a specific element. So click this icon and hover over the text John. It will show how it's rendered. Right now in this DOM it's not taking any title tag right now, right? It's taking only the class name and the names of the user. So let's click the fetch detail button and see how things gets added. Now you immediately see it immediately brings the title tag with the names. This is how you set the attribute dynamically. And now if I hover over the text, there will be a pop-up somewhere on the screen. So you can see here the John is coming somewhere here. I'll hover it here again. See, similarly your Smith is coming, similarly your Nick is coming, similarly this Mike is coming. So this title tag is very important from accessibility point of view, and you can attach any attribute, whether you want to attach a URL dynamically, you want to attach a image dynamically, you can use the set attribute using the query selector. Okay, so now let's go to our slides and see the second topic of this video, that is LWC colon DOM equal to manual. So this directive we commonly use when we want to attach some element within the tags dynamically. Like if I give you a real-time example, when we works on the charts and charting library and we want to append the chart within that element, so we use this particular directive. So add this directive to a native HTML element to attach an element as a child. So let's go to our VS Code and see how we can use this. So I'll create another div here. I'll call it as, I'll give a class child. Okay, right now this tag is empty, I'm doing nothing. On click of button, what I'm gonna do is comment something, LWC colon manual demo. Below this I'll write the code. So first what I'll do, I'll fetch this element, and to do that I can say const child element equal to this dot query selector. I want only query selector because I'm using only one, fetching only one child. So that is my child class, and once the element is available, I'll try to do is child element dot inner HTML. Inner HTML is a way how you apply the, or how you append the child within the tags. So what you can append is, suppose you want to build something like this, p tag, hey I am a child, within this tag. So to do it programmatically, what you can do is you take out this tag and say inner HTML. Whatever you assign to the inner HTML, it will replace anything if it's already exist and place that tag that you are assigning to inner HTML, and it should be in the string format. And I'm saying, hey, I'm a child element. So now if you click, it should append, but usually it throw a warning so that you use this particular directive. It may be, I guess, from the performance point of view for Lightning Web Components. So it says you should use this directive in your tag when your tag is empty and you are planning to append something within the tags. Let's go and add that tag, and our tag is LWC colon DOM is manual. So indirectly you are saying to the LWC, I am going to do the manual DOM operation. So LWC column is saying, okay, I am the LWC application. On the DOM, I am performing the manual operation. I'll remove the spaces in between, and I'll come back and I'll say, I'll just change this name to the exact directive name, and child element dot inner HTML append this. So let's deploy and see how it works. And before deploying, again I forgot to add this dot template. I'm used to document.query selected, that's why I always forget this .template. So let's deploy this again and see the output. So I have deployed the code, I have refreshed the page, and right now you are not able to see the tag that is hi I am a child element. So now I can hit this button. It should add that element dynamically. So I hit this. Now you see, hey, I am a child element. So this is how you render the child dynamically using LWC DOM manual directive. And this is how you play around with query selector. You can perform many things, like you can add and remove the attributes, you can add the classes, you can add the styling, but it's always recommend to use very less. You try to achieve the things using the getters or using the fields. That's more performance efficient. So that's it for this video. I'll see you in the next video.